Hello everyone, my name is Amanda R.N. Rockwell. I write, read, and review vampire fiction. Today we are taking a look at Dracula by Bram Stoker. This was originally going to be the first book I review on my channel, but then some stuff happened. I'll get into that a bit later. This book was originally published in 1897. Pretty much all vampire fiction that has come since owes its existence to this book. It's not the earliest piece of vampire literature. There are at least two others that came before Dracula and may or may not have served as inspiration for the book. Dracula follows several characters throughout the course of the book. These characters are all pretty well known, even by people who haven't read this book, since their public domain status has basically allowed people to take those characters and ideas and adapt them into their own source material. But for those of you who care about spoilers for a book that's over 120 years old, I will spare you the details, save for those that are in the blurb and the first chapter. Basically, Jonathan Harker is a real estate agent who journeys to Transylvania to make a real estate deal with the Count for a home in London. Transylvania nowadays is a region of Romania. While he's there, he learns many disturbing things about the Count and arrives home after the ordeal mentally scarred and in need of recovery. There's also an asylum inmate that the book focuses on every now and then that basically serves as a tool with which to tell the reader more about the Count and what he's capable of. I had very little, if any, experience reading horror books prior to reading Dracula. It was the book that made me realize that my opinion of horror as a genre was heavily skewed by movies and games, who tend to use a more shock factor, such as jump scares, suspense, and excessive gore. That's all meant to frighten you. That all it's meant to do is frighten you. And in a visual medium, that is quite effective. But through this book, I found that that is not actually always true, and in fact, what can scare someone, it can be drastically different from person to person. I know it didn't scare me at all. It was interesting at parts, but it wasn't scary. It's also heavily dependent on the atmosphere and what the author is going for in the narrative. So in the case of Dracula, it's more the setting and the character of Dracula himself. Since you're seeing the story from the perspective of the human characters, it helps to build mystery and suspense surrounding the Count, especially for those people who end up being the targets of vampires, with their experiences, like the gaps in their memory, if they have memory loss, and so on. As I mentioned briefly in my review for Salem's Lot a couple weeks back, Dracula is written in a different formula from most novels. The story is presented in the point of view of several characters throughout the course of the book in the form of journal entries. Other necessary details are reviewed through news articles and telegrams. These sources are then put together in chronological order to form the whole story of the novel, and that's for every single chapter of the book. While reading Salem's Lot, this was perfectly fine. I had no issues with reading it. This confused me because I started reading Salem's Lot when I was taking a break from Dracula. And I thought the style of writing was the problem. What I actually learned was the writing style combined with the Old English writing style made it borderline impossible for me to finish Dracula. I don't think the writing style aged very well. Older English just doesn't sit well with me, I guess. There are whole sections of the book I just flat out skipped over because I either had a hard time understanding what was written, or the near constant jumping between perspectives was just so jarring. I would just be beginning to settle into the mind of one character, and then it would just tear me right out of it, right at that part, and then it would just pull me right out of the moment again. Some chapters, it would do this several times. I kid you not. What made Salem's Lot easier to read was the more modern English in the narrative, which, as flowery as it is, doesn't hold a candle to the flower garden that is Dracula. I had to force myself to see the book through to the end, despite how hard it was and how much I skipped, which was mostly just the scenes with the inmate at the asylum, and the odd other scene or parts of scenes here and there. Well, the adaptations of the story for movies and television have upped the stakes a bit and crafted epic conclusions. The actual ending of the novel itself isn't that great. With such high praises that people often give this book, I was expecting more. I was also expecting more of a focus on Dracula himself. But it's all the human character perspectives we see. There's no chapter or parts of a chapter where it switches focus to Dracula in any way, third person or not. It's a lot of build-up with not a lot of payoff. I gave this book 3 stars on Goodreads despite my issues with it. And that's primarily because I know and acknowledge how important this book is to vampires, to horror, and fiction in general. I mean, I can understand why it was regarded so positively. I just wish I could enjoy it more. Really. This was one of the first books I picked up after years of not reading anything and just starting to get back into reading, so I found out real quickly that was a pretty bad idea. In searching for more books to add to my TBR, I came across 2 newer books that were written to add to the story of Dracula. The sequel, Dracula the Undead, and the prequel, Dracula, both of which are co-written by Dacre Stoker, who I believe is the great-grandnephew of Bram Stoker. So I'll check in with those books eventually, and maybe I'll have an easier time reading them. We'll see. What did you think? Did you enjoy Dracula? If not, tell me. Let's have a discussion in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. I post a new one every Tuesday. Follow me on social media. I have it all linked in the description below. Thank you for watching. Bye!